Hello everyone, my name is Tevzat. Today I'm going to talk about my graduation project, which is FL service. The FL service is a service which provides an API to the data scientists to communicate with the different host machines without dealing with any SSH and the containerization stuff. For example, if you're a data scientist, you can make a HTTP call to Python API, and the Python API will deploy your code to the host machine with the given credentials. And this API also relies on an Ansible. Ansible provides an idempotent playbooks and some installation scripts and all of this connection stuff. Those are just provided by Ansible. And by doing that, API implementer does not need to use SSH to communicate with a host machine. Also, Ansible has a Docker module and Docker Compose module, and you can integrate with the other tools, by using Ansible. I deploy my API library here. You can review my library endpoints here. For example, I have an SSH connection. You can copy the SSH key to remote key, which I will do later. And also you can generate an SSH key pair for the server side, and for the remote host, these are the endpoint. You can get the recorded remote host, filter the recorded remote host by IP address and contact information and FL identifier. And I also has a Docker module. Docker module provides a deployment and installation of the Docker engine in the host machine. And you can also, I have an event handler to register the dependency of the Docker to the API table regarding to the host machine information. It just returns the Docker state, which implies the dependencies of Docker, and you can install the Docker to host machine by using IP address, but it should be recorded to the API before installing the Docker. And I will also create a upload file. The create upload file just create a Docker image in the API, which will be deployed soon. And I have a deploy endpoint. The deploy endpoint just takes an IP address and deploy the regarding image, which is located in the server host to the edge host machine. And I also have a ping endpoint, which just pings the computer, recorded computer, to determine whether it has return any package to the request. Okay, first of all, I need to start the server. Right now, this API server is running on port 8000, and then I need to I have already created the SSH key pair for the server. I will just call the copy SSH key to remote, which is already running on my desk right now, which is located in the private IP in my home local network. And here is the endpoint. If you run this, it will just here's the credentials. I'm sending you SSH username, SSH password. You can send another things as well, another credentials if it is required. And also FL identifier, which just identify which model you want to, which it's just a name, but it will be used in the database in the API side. And if I send a request, it just successfully copied the remote host SSH key copied to the remote host successfully. That means we can use Ansible until that point to communicate with the remote host machine. And after doing that, we can see the table, I guess. And let me open the table through open. Yeah, here is a here is the table. We can run that. Yeah, we can see the recordings and SSH password. Those are all recorded in the database of the API. And I also has remote host Docker state, which just implies the Docker dependencies of the remote host. And let's turn back to our code base. And after running copy SSH key to remote, we can make get remote host, get host by IP address, etc. For doing that, I just implement the client library by using CLI in Go. And you can make, for example, make a request to the host machine. For example, we can ping the host machine by using CLI. If I ping it, it will just ping in the server. And here's a running Ansible playbook. We just ping the host machine, and it just returned it successfully. And also you can see the reference. You can see the command, which command you can use by using the CLI. I implemented the Docker, ping, and remote host. Let's try the remote host. And if I give a flag with the IP address, it just looks up the server looks up the remote host machine in the API and determine whether it is recorded or not. Yeah, if we can make a request, you can see that we get 200, which is okay. And then here is the return value. It just returns the contact information, description, a file identifier, and the IP address of the host machine. And you have also another method. You can just say help, and you can filter by contact information, a file identifier, and as you're doing the IP address. Also, you can give a config string. You can set the config in the running home directory and fl svc.yaml. It just sets the address of sorry, it just sets the what is the destination address of the server which the client will make a request with. Okay, then we can use a Docker module. We can install Docker. You can also install Docker by using CLI. If you go there, you can just run Docker install and give it an IP address. It will just start the Docker installation. You can see that here it just starts the Docker playbook, which installs the Docker on the remote machine. Also, you can see that I just auto-generate the all module YAML. Here's the auto-generated file which I define how can it be printed. I have an Ansible host, user, an Ansible password. It just sets all of them and then start the Docker installation on the remote host. Also, here's the predefined playbook, which is install the Docker on the remote machine. Each of them has async and pool variable. It just checks the health of the task, and each task returns an handler and register whether this dependency is installed successfully or not to the API database. Yeah, we'll just return soon, I guess. We can wait it. Yeah, you can see some successful playbook task. There are 6 tasks in the playbook for installing Docker in it. Yeah, also you can some dependencies, for example URL lib things, because some of the things does not work in focal Ubuntu. You can put their dependency in it and it will just run fine. Yeah, we can see that we just return okay, and here it just says okay, I run the Ansible playbook and successfully. That means we have Docker in a remote host machine. We can look for it through here by using CLI as well. You can just write fpulse svc docker, and if you say help, just say you can just states, and if we give the IP address, it just return all the state information of the Docker here. These are all dependencies for running Docker in the remote machine. I designed that way because without getting details about the Docker, we cannot deploy our images, etc. And the third part is another part is, after we define all of them, after we install Docker in a remote machine, we can create an image by using service. Let's suppose that here I have a sample project which has a client.py, server.py, and definition YAML, etc. But the definition YAML is a special YAML which just implies the entry point, source directory, target directory, and image name of the running the image when it will be deployed. The entry point is just the subsequent commands, and source directory will be mounted. Host source directory will be mounted in the Docker container. Then here's the image name, which will be used as a name in the Docker. And my service just takes all of the code as a zip file, and you can use that zip file and send to the endpoint to create a Docker image for it. For creating a Docker image, you have to supply IP address, platform information, architecture, and file as a string or binary, and it's a zip file includes a project source code. For doing that, I'm just saying okay. Okay, here I'm just saying okay, just go. I didn't implement yet for the CLI side, but it is quite doable and it will be easy. And I'm just making a post request to Docker, upload source files and a given IP address, and the PyTorch is an architecture, and PyTorch is a framework name, and the architecture is AMD 64. And then I'm just giving an absolute path name to the file from my host, because I'm using as a client as well. When I run it, it will just magically build an image for me in the server side and record the image in the server side. Yeah, it will just take some moment. It will take a lot of moment, I guess, because 400 images right there. I mean, more than 400 megabytes. Also, image is bigger than 3 gigabytes because it has a PyTorch in it, also Torch Vision in it. You can use pre-trained model. While doing that, you can see the source directory is also generated, and the source directory will just includes the source of the client. That means it is a client code which is just deployed through the service. The client just deploys its zip directory to the server, and the server just creates the Docker file and the image for the client. The client does not need to handle all of them. And also client, by using deploy endpoint, he or she will just make a request to deploy endpoint. That means it will just deploy the generated Docker file to the remote host machine. And he is running the Docker file. You can see the auto-generated Docker file here. Entry point is given by the client. All these requirements given by the client. I just fork the PyTorch certain runtime according to given architecture and generate the script. Yeah, it's just working. Then we will just make a request to deploy. And before the deploy, as you can see, I have also a server. I will run the server in that machine, and it will just wait for the deployment. That means it will be deployed. Wait for the deployment. Then after deploying, the deployed container in the remote host will make a request to the server by using federated learning. I really think about the design and portability, maintainability issues, because if I am implementing the API, it should be quite clear and sustainable, maintainable, etc. And that's why I create it in that way. For example, here you can see the test model YAML. The test model YAML is special YAML. It is auto-generated with the context of Flower server and client perspective. You can set the client type. You can set the Flower node type, and records all of your code here. That means you can just place all of your things, all of your Flower federated learning cluster in a single YAML and manage with Ansible through API endpoint. Here we just run the image and deploy the things, and right now everything worked fine and sending the tarball. And after that, we will just see the image in our local. Yeah, everything has worked fine. And then let's look at the image. docker image list, and okay, you can see the image here, which is auto generated by the endpoint. You can run it. We can run the image, but I want to show the deployment part. In the deployment, you just need to, okay, in the deployment part, you just need to make a post request to the API address. If the API address is recorded in a database, and if it has an source directory, which is, which is implies the source of the client, it should be done before the giving that request. And the service just looks for the definition YAML. The definition YAML just takes an entry point, source directory, and target directory, and image name. It will just use these information to run the Docker image, right? Especially source directory and target directory will just, let's look at from the source code. Here, deployment Ansible playbook. The playbook here, deployment YAML, is auto-generated. I'm binding this home app model data to the endpoint, and you can just make a request to the host by just making that request. If you run this, that means okay, deploy this image. Okay, deploy this image. It will just start deploying. It just fails because let me see why. Okay, I don't know why, but you need to retry because there's several things because of the Ansible. As you can see, it just says okay, I deployed. Okay, I cannot prove it, but you can see the deployment of the Docker image in the remote host right now. The container is running, and actually we forgot to run the server. Python server. Yeah, after that, the client image of deploying will connect to the server according to the given client code. In the client code, the IP address is a certain, and that means client needs to know about the server IP address, etc. But it's all about our federated learning stuff and the deployment stuff, etc. Okay, thank you to watch my video, and you can see the image. I will publish this FL service as a public in the GitHub. You can see there. You can give a comment, create a PR, or create an issue. And it was a graduation project. It's not a production ready setup, but it just works fine. You can use for you can use for your own stuff. But for scaling the application, scaling the API is not an easy job. It should be integrated with the cloud infrastructure, etc. Because I didn't deploy the API to the production stage. I'm just running in my local, and and also a lot of methods were implemented as a sync, not an async. That will be improvement, but it's just a proof of concept project, and works fine. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.